call a meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Ramos? Mr. Lindemann?
Here.
You have joined the call, but you are the only one here.
Mr. Sabal?
Here.
Dr. Gomez?
Here.
Mr. Burbank?
Here. Try Mr. Ramos again, see if he's on the line.
Hello, please leave a message.
Okay, we'll see if he checks in
Mr. Ramos?
a little bit later. Item 1D, approval of the minutes. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes as listed there, 1, 2, and 3.
I move to approve the minutes.
Motion by Mr. Lindemann. Is there a second?
Second.
By Dr. Gomez.
You have joined the call, but you are the only one here.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos? Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal? Mr. Sabal?
Yes,
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burbank?
Yes. Item 1E, summary of current events. Ms. Samaniego.
I have a couple things. Wanted to acknowledge that the teachers that were selected for Teacher of the Year during our 19-20 school year were recognized at the county level by County Superintendent Jackie Clay, and so they had a nice ceremony in Sierra Vista. It was a drive-by pickup of their recognition, and those were the teachers that were selected as the elementary teacher of the year level, middle school and high school. Mrs. Cox, I don't know if you attended or if our teachers were recognized over there. So I want to thank the office of Jackie Clay for putting that on and recognizing our teachers. And we also I want to thank APS for awarding. So far, we've had 9 teachers that have been awarded a APS mini grant to be used, for something in their classroom. And the final drawing will be in a couple days, Alma?
Yes.
So we may have more teachers that have been awarded. I think it's $500 is the APS mini grant. So thank you to APS, and that's all I have.
Okay, great. Board members, any reports?
Not me.
Mr. Ramos? He's probably still on the line. Mr. Sabal,
yes,
do you have a report?
Do you have a report?
item 3 of this agenda. I would like to diffuse
You have joined the call, but you are the only one here.
some type of legal activity. So I'd like to recuse myself from item 3.
Okay, Mr. Sabal.
Okay, Mr. Sabal, it'd probably be more appropriate that you do it at that time for the record. And it's good that we have an advance notice on that so that when we get there, we won't forget that. F, reports. Ex officio student member, members of the board were pleasantly going to welcome today Mr. Garrick Duarte, who is the current Douglas High School superintendent. Excuse me.
You can have
Student
that
body
title.
president. He's the student body president, and we haven't had a student body president here in quite some time,
Yes.
especially with the COVID back when we were considering graduation and everything related to it. But it's good to have you here, and the staff will give you a copy of the policy that deals with your participation here. And just for the record, we want you to know that you can do You can do almost anything you want here. You can raise your hand, you can comment on any item. The only thing is you can't vote and you can't participate in an executive session, all right? But we'll get more into that later as we move along. But we want to sincerely welcome you here today. And, you know, it's probably appropriate to ask you, as student body president, although you haven't had any opportunity for interaction because of the circumstances, but how do you just in general feel about what's going on with the high school specifically? If you feel comfortable commenting on that, about what the activities look like up there, or the absence of activities, or how the students are feeling about school, why don't you just give us, if you feel comfortable doing that now?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. So, so far, I think that most extracurricular activities have started meeting again. I know that student council we had our student body elections on September 14th, our class president or our class officer elections on September 16th, and our first student council meeting was on September 28th. So now that student council is up and running, I think that other clubs will also begin meeting. Right now I think that a lot of the students are trying to make the most of it. From what I've seen in our leadership is that everyone still wants to do as much as they can, and everyone is like eager pitching ideas for ways to make this school year as normal as possible. I think that in terms of activities, so far not having the pick game in August as usual, and like just sports in general, that has had somewhat of an effect on school spirit, but student council is working on ways to keep school spirit alive. So I think that with the athletics coming up, this week swim, golf, and cross country have their first meets. Next week volleyball, and in 2 weeks football. I think that is going to really help students get back into the swing of things and really just motivate them to try and enjoy this year.
But I don't want to put you on the spot, and if you don't know, then you don't know. But what is the general feeling of the student body, of the students that you're interacting with about the distant learning and the hybrid? How are the students feeling about that?
From the students I've interacted with, I know that a big problem is pacing, having to go through in the way that the high school has it with the trimesters. Having to go through 18 weeks of learning in 6 weeks has been a struggle for a lot of kids, and teachers alike, trying to fit all that material in that short amount of time. I think that now kids are starting to get more used to it, but at the start it was really hard for kids to stay motivated and still have that desire to learn when they're not in a classroom.
Do you think that if the board, on the recommendation of the administration, were to go to a hybrid, and you know what that is, of course, and we would come back and have a staggered schedule or whatever was done, that the rules of social distancing and the wearing of masks and all of the criteria, the restrictions and the requirements that would be in place to do that, do you think that the students at the high school would have a hard time with that? Do you think that would cause a problem to the administration?
I think that majority of students would be able to follow the regulations. I mean, there's always a few troublemakers, but I think for the most part that it would be able to go smoothly on part of the student.
Okay, welcome, and again, you're going to get a copy of the policy, and you'll have an agenda. And again, if you see something on there that you think is pertinent to the high school, or something you want to comment on that relates directly to high school students or students in general, feel free to comment on it, okay? And don't be bashful, all right?
Okay.
Okay, members of the board, do you have any, we don't want to get into a discussion, but any comments regarding our exercise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to welcome Mr. Garrick Dorothy to our board here, and thank you very much for doing it.
Thank you.
Is your family, or are you or your parents, are they Yankee fans?
Yes,
Is that the reason for the Garrick?
yes, that is.
Truthfully, is that right?
That is the reason.
Mr. Ramos, do you have any, comments or any remarks, to direct towards the, Mr. Duarte?
No, this is Mr. Ramos. I just want to welcome him too, and it's good to start seeing some coming back to our regular meetings with even with our COVID-19 situation. And I want to apologize for being late. I was able to hear all of his reports though, and once again I apologize for being late to the meeting.
Are his parents here?
No, I think you came alone, right?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
They weren't able to make it? Your parents?
No.
Did somebody want to take a picture for him to submit to the newspaper?
Denise, do you have
This
your
being his
picture? Your
first
phone?
meeting? Could somebody do that? I think this is a moment for him to remember, and his parents as well, and maybe the people in the community, and especially his classmates would like to.
Hello.
So I'll take one of you and then I'll take it this way, okay? Okay, I'm saying cheesy, just can't.
Alma, do you have a nameplate for him?
Yes, it's here.
Oh, okay, good. You already got it? And you were going to do the other ones too in the front, remember? We're still working on that?
Yes. And I don't know how it's going to be done. I think everybody there.
Okay?
You can stand like over by Mr. Bahrain and,
Okay.
you know, and maybe just get his picture there.
Yeah, I think that, I'd like to see the whole board in on it with him, because maybe we could have some of the board members stand up in front there, and that way we would keep the distance. And can you get everybody in, Denise? He's got to have something to remember this
Yes.
by.
Oh, no.
No, wait, you're not covering up anybody?
I don't need.
Are we covering up anybody?
That's perfect. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 1 more. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I'm sure your mom is taking pictures of the screen.
Yeah, you can tell him, why are they wearing masks? Item F2, Business Officer Report, Mr. Soto.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, board members, Mr. Maniego. This is my cash report for the month of September. And if you can notice, we still have a lot of stuff that is not encumbered yet. And the reason, same as last month, is because we have some vacancies that we haven't filled. But we're going to have a much better picture next month, because next week we're going to hopefully approve the AFR, which is the annual financial report. We're going to have a special meeting. And then you're going to see a different report for my cash. Any questions on
Members
this
of the
report?
board, any questions? Mr. Lindeman?
When was the special meeting? Was it next Wednesday?
Yes, the
Well,
third, the
I'd like
14th.
to ask Mr. President if we could move that to noon then, because I have a city council meeting on next Wednesday at 5:30.
That would be on the 14th, right?
That will be on the 14th. Yeah, we have until the 15th to submit the AFR. So yeah, 12 o'clock will work for us, hopefully. I mean, we still have issues with the software, but we're thinking that we're gonna
Mr. Bahrain?
solve the
Okay,
problem.
and board members, you have any questions? Dr. Gomez, you have a question?
No.
Comment? It's something that, of course, is very close to what you're talking about there. How are the finances regarding the enrollment?
Well, and I know Mrs. Cox is gonna talk about enrollment, but yeah, we keep losing kids. At this point, we're close to 200. It's 193, 194 students. It's money-wise, that represents almost $850,000. But like I said earlier, what's saving us right now, it's the vacancies we have. So, but depending on how the board votes today about the hybrid and the or staying online, whatever, then we're gonna have to take some measurements regardless of what the decision is moving forward. Because again, we don't know if we're gonna gain kids or we're gonna keep losing kids. So it's a moving target at this point. But for sure, that's the number of kids that we have lost so far since the start of the school year.
Of course, our main focus is the education of the children
Correct.
in the school district. In order to do that, we have to be concerned about the finances.
Correct.
With the way things are going right now, and of course, we discuss this all the time, but I think it's important that the board always be aware of what's happening. With the fact that right now we're distance learning, there's a lot of positions by virtue of that we don't need to fill.
Correct.
And that's a savings. If we were to go hybrid, then some of these other positions would have to kick in, and then the expenses would be generated there because of what would be considered active hires. Right?
Correct.
So then if the district, we'll ask that, I'll ask that later. That'll be a question for next week.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll be available,
members of the
yeah.
board, anybody else have any other questions?
I just have one, if we're talking about going to hybrid, there again, are we going to be ready? Do we have the technology in place? Do we have the cameras for all the teachers to do double duty?
Well, I think
Or is
that's
that
gonna be
an
part,
expense?
excuse me, but I think that'll be part of Mrs. Samanyego's
Yeah.
report when we get
On
there.
that item.
But the reason I wanted him here is because when she starts giving a report, then I personally was gonna have some questions about the hybrid, and I'm gonna have some questions about distance learning vis-a-vis the hybrid. So, Dr. Gomez, do you have any questions or comments right now? So I think, Mr. Ramos or Mr. Sabal, any questions?
Yes, Mr. President, this is Mr. Ramos. I just want to ask, teacher, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any idea as to how many students we could lose and then really be, or at what number of students can we lose without really being financially not capable to handle our debts?
How many students?
Like
could
how
we?
many more students would it
How
take?
many more students can we lose?
Well,
Zero.
I'm hoping for none. But again, most of those kids that we lost is because all the families moved. So, as a matter of fact, I mean, I would probably think that more than 70%, 75% of those kids moved because of their families, looking for jobs in Phoenix and the Tucson area. So even if we go hybrid or even if we go back full traditional, I don't think we're going to recover those kids anyways. And the main concern right now will be,
What I meant is, every year we lose students, and not because of, from the parents moving, but a lot of them, we have migrant workers that put their kids in there, and we lose those students.
Correct.
So if we lose a higher amount, what do you think a larger amount of students, can we afford losing another 100 students? Is what I'm getting at.
No. Let me kind of preempt,
Okay.
preempt him on this. Mr. Ramos, we could lose half of the student body. And then what would happen would be, I don't think that Mr. Soto could give you a number if he said, if we lose 1,500 more, or we lose 300 more, then we have to close the district. What would happen is, and I don't want to preempt him, but because I see him smiling, because I think he knows what the answer is, then you'd be looking at a reduction in force.
correct.
You'd be looking at not only a hiring freeze because it is concomitant with the reduction in force. You would be looking at a expenditure freeze.
Correct.
And there would be no purchasing at all. And then, if that weren't enough, which it probably wouldn't be, then we would be looking at going into our line or
Credit, yeah.
line of credit interest, line of credit.
Correct.
And then we pay interest on that.
Yes.
And then we'd be registering warrants. So I think
Yes.
that, and I didn't want to preempt you, but sitting here, and I know that could happen, is that we could lose, you can't put a number on it. It's infinite, you could lose any given amount of students, but then what kicks in is what we have to do to accommodate and make up for that. And that
Correct.
would be reduction in force, it would be a hiring freeze, it would be a freeze on expenditures. it would be some very, very drastic things
Yeah.
on the budget. Hopefully, Mr. Soto answered your question.
Yeah, I was, Mr. Ramos, I was keeping in mind that 85% of the whole budget is salaries and benefits.
Ray, you did a very good job. My concern was only that, going hybrid, we may lose some more students. And that was my concern, and this is why I was asking. But it was something that I was expecting from your answers. This is, something that we can't avoid and we can't do anything about. We just have to leave it up to what happens in our district and leave it up to God to keep us all safe and all with money to be able to pay all the bills. Thank you.
Okay, very well, thank
Okay.
you. That needed to be said anyway,
Yeah.
and so it's good he answered the question, because those circumstances could prevail at one point, where things got so dire that we would have to take some extreme measures
Definitely.
to make sure that the district could be
Still runs.
fiscally responsible and solvent. So anyway, we'll move on then. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr. Soto.
thank you.
I'm sure there'll be some more questions when we get to Ms. Samaniego's report. Human Resources and Student Enrollment Report, Ms. Cox.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, board members. Anna, I've seen you all day.
Yes.
Hello. So a lot of what was just said was preempted, so I have a lot of the same information. So currently, our enrollment is at 3,815. Okay, that's what our enrollment stands at right now. But as I was listening to the conversation, there is some things I'd like to clarify. That although we do have a hiring freeze in place right now, and that there are positions that do need to be, we do need to hire for, okay? Essential positions, so we're not opening new positions, it's just if certain people leave. So right now, we have one teacher vacancy at Rayburn Middle School. We're also needing to hire some ESSIAs, and I think they spoke of it at the last board meeting. So you will see on the board agenda that there are some people being hired, but it's because people are resigning or whatever's happening. So I just wanted to let you know and the community know that although we do have a hiring freeze, there are positions that you're going to see because we need to. They're essential employees. Okay, any questions?
Is that all encompassing, that's both of them?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Members of the board, any questions? Mr. Lindeman?
No.
Dr. Gomez? No. Mr. Sabal, any questions? Or Mrs. Cox?
Yeah, this is about accusing myself from voting on this. Is this the time I should
No,
do this?
not yet.
We'll let you know,
No,
Mr. Sabal.
no, we'll let you know when we get there.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Mr. Ramos, any questions of Ms. Cox?
No questions.
Thank you. All right, item G, public comments. Ms. Samaniego, I think you've got some, so you want
Yes.
to read them?
We had 5 public comments submitted to Ms. Valenzuela. So I'll start with the first one. This is from Ana Luisa A. Morales, a resident here in Douglas. And she has a daughter who's a student and a son who teaches. And it says, hybrid learning. I wish that the board to consider finishing this semester with online learning until the beginning of the new year 2021. We just had our local church close because a student had COVID and participated in a ceremony. My point is, if the student, along with his or her parents, were able to walk into a church and put the parish in danger to pass COVID to them, how will it work at the schools? The church has been practicing the distancing rules and as schools have, but younger students will go to the school not knowing their symptoms that can be COVID related and affect whoever they come into contact with. I personally have a daughter that is a senior and my son is a teacher at the district. I am concerned for the students and all employees, not just my own. Just please consider holding off until the new year to send them back to face-to-face learning. Lord willing, by this situation will be more manageable and maintained. Thank you, Ana Luisa Morales. The next one is from David R. Thigh. And it says, my reason for writing is to support and recognize Mr. Nate Darris for his outstanding abilities as a music teacher in your district. I also write to seek your district support of music in your schools. It is extremely important facet of development in each and every student. And with the pandemic altering our way of life and learning, it's vital to seek ways to bring about the opportunity for music to remain in the curriculum. Humbly, I share my thoughts on why music should be taught in our schools. Music is science, it is exact, specific, and music is 100% correct. 99% is no good. It is unalterable. It demands exact acoustics. Music is mathematical. It is rhythmically based on the subdivision of time and space into fractions, which must be done instantaneously and not worked out on paper. Music is a foreign language. Many songs are sung in a foreign language. Additionally, most of the musical terms are in Italian, German, French, and the notation of notes certainly is English, but a highly developed kind of shorthand. Music is physical education. It requires fantastic coordination of fingers, hands, arms, lips, and facial muscles, in addition to extraordinary control of the back, stomach, and chest muscles, which must respond instantly to the sounds the ear hears and the mind interprets. Music is all of these things, but most of all, music is art. It allows a human being to take all of these dry and technical, but fantastically difficult techniques and use them to create emotion. That is one thing that science cannot duplicate: humanism or feeling or emotion, or call it what you will. That's why music must be taught. Not because I expect anyone to major in music, but because I expect anyone to perform music all their life. Not so you can relax, not so you can have fun, but so that you will be human. You will recognize beauty, you will be sensitive, you will be closer to the intimate beyond our world, so that you'll have something to cling to, so that you'll have more love and compassion, gentleness, more self-control, more good, in short, more life. Of what value will it be to make a prosperous living unless an individual knows how to live? That's why music should be taught. Thank you for your time. The next one is from Nathan Darris. He is a resident here in Douglas and also a teacher at Douglas High School, and representing Douglas High School and Douglas Education Association. Dear Douglas School Board and Administration, I am writing to address the importance of supporting students in music in our schools more. We have been working hard online, recording students and creating individual portfolios to share with parents using an online platform called Smart Music the first trimester. We want to use more technology to involve them and others in virtual concerts by the end of the year with iPads. The other idea is to offer more to our students. A good music program starts at the beginning of foundations that are taught in lower grade levels. Currently in my schedule, I would be open to starting something for fifth graders to teach music theory, concepts, music history on Wednesdays as an idea. Once a week for any interested student. No grades, just a chance for them to get excited. Many programs have a program to start with the students to sing in a youth choir or learn the concepts in a class prior to moving in the middle school level. Being in virtual learning is a great chance to offer more opportunities to students wanting to learn and be part of our program. I was able to work with 3 beginner instrumentalists in the first trimester who are doing an amazing job. We also need to find ways to recognize our musicians more involved in music or the arts. I propose to look at the art seal that can be added to graduation certificate and help students use when applying for colleges and scholarships. High school administrators have the requirements to apply for students who qualify by taking a lot of the fine arts classes. We currently have a couple graduates at the college level doing amazing things at NAU and U of A. Thank you, Nathaniel Darris. Let's see. Okay, this one is from Claudio Silvas, 2600 12th Street. And let me see. Are kids going back to school soon? Is that it, Alma? If they do, what are the specific control measures that Douglas School will take and are taking to make sure that our kids don't become infected, come back home and infect people that are considered high risk and are taking care of themselves. We have seen all over the state that schools that have opened have high number of cases. Are you guys considering opening schools? Why, if you know that that is a high risk? Thank you for your time and thanks for your service. And the last one is from Brita Kimball, Douglas resident. She is a staff and representing Douglas Education Association. Good evening, President Borain, members of the board, Mrs. Samaniego, DUSD administration, and guest. My name is Brita Kimball. I am currently the Douglas Education Association president, and I would like to take a moment to comment on behalf of our DEA members regarding the distance learning plan and hybrid model. My comments today represent the opinions of Douglas Education Association members. I surveyed my members regarding their thoughts of online learning and the face-to-face hybrid model. 58.7% of my members would prefer keeping school 100% online. They feel this is the safest option for staff and students alike. However, 39.1% would like to see us return face-to-face, and 2.2% want to return to school on a normal schedule with additional safety measures like masks and extra cleaning. I also surveyed my members regarding their specific concerns regarding cleaning, online learning, and working with students directly. I have listed the recurring concerns here. Who is in charge of cleaning all areas at our buildings, door handles, bathrooms, light switches, drinking fountains, chairs? Is it too much for the custodians? However, we have not received proper training on cleaning and disinfecting ourselves. We would like to know who is responsible for each cleaning task and how often each of these items are being cleaned. How will we accommodate all of the hand washing that needs to take place? Will hand washing stations be in place if we return to face-to-face hybrid? Students are struggling and so are the parents. This is manifesting as non-completion of schoolwork and not showing up to virtual class. Technology and the internet is not equitable for all students. This widens the equality gap even further. Students are not engaging in the curriculum unless they have very supportive home or are extremely strong student. The aspects of learning that typically engage these lower students, such as hands-on learning, is very difficult to deliver in online instruction. At the high school level, a 6-week semester is not adequate for instruction and is causing the students on the lower end to even do more poorly and offset just fail. Teachers are having to trim out many of the more engaging pieces of instruction to make it fit into a 6-week course. If we return to face-to-face, how will we juggle the students that are still at home fully online with those that are in our classrooms? What are the specific guidelines that the school will follow if a student is showing symptoms at school? Do we send them to their nurse? Does the entire classroom get quarantined? Like I said, these are the mostly common reference concerns of DEA members. Many of them need to be addressed no matter if we return to face-to-face or continue online. We know that making the decisions regarding school reopening is not a straightforward task, as there are many pros and cons to each scenario. And we appreciate that you continue to keep the safety and welfare of all staff and students a priority. Thank you in advance for your consideration of the opinion of DEA members as you move forward with your decision making.
Is that it? Is that it, Ms. Samaniego?
Yes. Yes.
Although members of the board are familiar with the open meeting law and that we don't respond to comments by the public unless it's felt that there's a necessity to do so. And I feel in this case, without a deep discussion, that just comments from the administration regarding the last one, which were very valid concerns. And by the way, how many members are there of the DEA? 55% of what? Do you know how many members they have? Does anybody know how members?
No.
I think it'd be important for Ms. Kimball. That way, 55% of whatever the total amount is would be interesting to know, so that the board understands how many people they're actually talking about. We don't know how many members they have. But her concerns are valid, and my comment would be that I thought, and I think the board did too, when we had the original emergency back in the spring, that there was an extensive discussion regarding all of the precautions and the measures that were going to be taken. And I think that in some of those platforms and in some of the phases that were discussed with the board, those specific concerns expressed by her were addressed, I thought, with the exception of the ones that couldn't be addressed because there was no staff regarding the wash stations and those kinds of things. But because of the, I think because of the timing and the urgency that, especially when we discuss later what the district's going to do, and then those teachers that will be affected by it and the students know exactly what is in place to do that. Now, I know that's not on the agenda, so that when we get to the hybrid, so that, and you discuss what your report, whatever it's gonna be, and your recommendations, whatever they are, that you address those concerns expressed by the DEA
Yes,
president,
I
okay?
will.
All right, so then we'll move on, and we'll go to item 2, consent agenda items, and the first one is 2A, approval of the following consent agenda items. A1, payroll and expense vouchers, 1, 2, and 3. Entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the consent agenda items as listed, items 1, 2, and 3.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by, is that Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes,
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabar?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bering?
Yes. Item 3A, discussion action on the approval of certified, I'm sorry.
Mr. Sabal is going to.
Yes, right.
No.
This would be the time.
Yeah, right. Discussion action on the approval of certified hires, and Mr. Sabal, this is the one where if you feel you need to recuse yourself, it's time to do that.
Yes, I do. I feel like I have to recuse myself because there might be some conflict of interest. So please count me out of this part of the agenda.
Okay, so for the record, Mr. Sabal is recusing himself for what he would consider an apparent or a considered conflict of interest. Entertain a motion.
I move to approve the certified hires as listed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Gomez. Discussion, Ms. Samaniego.
None.
We're on 3A.
Oh, 3A, okay. Didn't you just, oh, 3A is as presented by Mrs. Cox, certified hires, and you have the 21st Century Program for, that's taking place at Stevenson Elementary, and of course, this is virtually. So these are just employees that are already here at the district and hiring one counselor for DHS.
Members of the board, do you have any questions, discussion, comments regarding the hires? Mr. Ramos?
no,
Let me just quickly ask Ms. Cox, those 21st century people, could you just because of that 21st century program, just tell the board, I don't know if you need to come all the way up there or not, just tell us what they're doing and how they're actually effectuating those duties and responsibilities.
Okay, so this is after school, it's the after-school enrichment program. There is a correction to the last
Oh,
one.
yes, site coordinator.
She's a site coordinator and not a teacher. But it's extra duties after their workday has finished. So they will start with the after school, and it'll be virtual for the time being. So they'll have a virtual enrichment program.
So if you're having site coordinators, then there are activities taking place there.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, good. Any other questions or comments, members of the board?
Well, she just mentioned is Miriam Herman, is that the one you're talking about?
Yes. So
So
she
she
is
just-
the site coordinator and
Instead of a
not.
teacher.
Not
Yeah,
a
so there's a
teacher, okay.
correction there.
And then also for clarification, that's over and above, that's why it's over and above the regular school hour, right?
Yes. It
Okay.
is after their contractual date ends. Yes.
And the reason we, Mr. Schleppel, the reason we don't give them an addendum, just for clarification, is because they're hourly, their pay is based on an
Yeah,
hourly wage?
and by the grant.
Is that right, Anna?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay, good. All right.
Excuse me, and I have one more correction. So, the counselor position, it's being paid out of the school safety grant, not M&O.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Roll call.
Yes. Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes. Item B, discussion action on the approval of classified hires. Entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the classified hires as listed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Gomez. Discussion action on the 21st Century After Program aids as well as the two up above. Is there any discussion or any further explanation you feel that's necessary or warranted?
Before you guys take a vote, just Amy Rojas, listed as an instructional aide, she's a data clerk. So that's the only correction on that one.
She's a what?
Data
clerk?
clerk, data
Data
clerk,
clerk,
yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
Ms. Bianca?
Where?
And she's the
Amy
last
Rojas.
bullet on that
On
page,
the bottom.
Amy Rojas. And on the next page, Bianca Moreno, she's being hired as a health aide, not an instructional aide.
Where's
as
the
presented.
funding coming out of that, out of the 21st
21st
century?
century,
Oh, okay.
yes.
All right, we have a motion on the floor.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal? Mr. Sabal?
No.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes. And what was the vote? 4-1?
4 to 1. It passed.
Okay, and Mr. Sabal, that was a negative vote on your part?
I beg your pardon?
Was that a negative vote on that item for the approval of classified hires?
Yes.
Yes, it was a negative vote, yes, okay. All right, item C, discussion action on the approval of certified retirement. Ms.
Yes.
Samaniego?
Yes, as presented, Dina Guzman is a teacher at Rayburn Middle School, and she's been with us, for a long, long time. I was at RBMS as the assistant principal when she got hired, so she will be retiring at the end of this school year, and we're sad to see her leave.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve
I move to approve the
by Mr.
certified
Lindemann.
retirement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sabal. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes. Item D, discussion action on the approval of classified resignations and retirement. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, we have Josie Rosadillo, who's going to be retiring from DHS bookstore manager position and an instructional aide. So Josie, she's ran that bookstore for many, many years, and we're going to be sad to see her leave at the end of this year.
How many, it's sad to see somebody like Josie Rosalio go. She's been with the district so long, and as a matter of fact, her family has, her mother was a district employee when she was just a young girl. How many years has Josie been with the district?
I don't know that, Mr. Vereen. I don't have that.
Well,
she
anyway,
didn't
we'll
state it in
accept
her
that
letter.
with
Mhm.
regrets
Yes.
and wish her the best for all of her many years of efficient, reliable, and dedicated service to the Douglas Unified School District. We have a motion on the floor.
I move to approve.
Mr. Lindemann, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Yeah, I move to approve the item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Gomez. Item, roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes, item E, discussion action on the approval of request to rescind certified retirement. Ms. Samaniego, you or Mrs. Cox?
Yes, as presented, Mr. Ross had submitted his retirement letter, and he has reconsidered. CT, fire, and science teaching position is hard to find, so as presented.
And the recommendation of administration
Yes,
is
to
to
accept it.
approve?
Mhm.
Entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve item E.
Second
Second.
by Mr. Sabal. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes. Item F, discussion action on the approval of the increase in hours. Ms. Samaniego?
Yes, before I say this, we did forget the ex officio student member, Douglas High School report. Did you have a report?
He didn't.
He did? Everything? Well, there's no activities other than what you said. I just wanted to make sure. Usually the ex officio is a list of things, and I'm like, did we skip Garrett? But, okay, we got you. I just wanted to say that,
Wait a minute,
sorry.
you want to give him more time? than you
Yes.
gave him? No, it's
All
fine,
right,
it's fine.
usually it's a list of things, so I wasn't like, did he do it or did he not? Okay, all right, so as presented, these are instructional aids that we need to increase by half an hour, and they are working with ESS children.
And I think it's always important for the board to know why it's an increase.
Yes. And because of these positions, Mrs. Cox, were at Ferris, and the positions that we moved them to are Joe Carlson, but it's the number of kids that are there for the number of hours that we need that support.
Were these the positions that were encumbered, and then, and they weren't working, and then when you moved them, then they were actively on the job, and now you have to pay them? And now you're gonna give them an increase of half an hour?
Half an hour.
How many hours were they working in the position prior, before they were moved to
These
the?
people, 5.5. They were part-timers. So the positions were full-time. We moved them to Joe Carlson.
Oh, okay.
That's full-time. So these people were already in Joe Carlson. They just moved 30 minutes to make it a 6-hour position.
You got it. Do we have a motion on the floor?
No, sir.
I move to approve.
Mr. Lindeman,
Second,
by Dr. Gomez. Any discussion?
yes.
Dr. Gomez?
So if they work 6 hours, they're considered full-time?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is that it, Doctor? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes,
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes,
Mr. Sabal?
Yes,
Dr. Gomez?
Yes,
Mr. Bahrain?
Yes. Item G, discussion action on approval of classified transfers. Who's going to handle that, Ms. Cox or Ms. Samaniego?
I can do it. It's as presented. These are just already currently employees of our district that are moving into these either higher hours or less hours per their request.
Let's get a motion on the floor to approve.
I move to approve.
By Mr. Lindeman, second.
second,
By Dr. Gomez. Discussion. So the first person there is going from a custodian at Joe Carlson to a
Part-time.
part-time at Clausen for 8 hours, so that's an increase in hours?
He's actually, it's an increase of hours for him, but not for the position, because he's replacing a position for the full-time custodian at Clausen.
So that's an
Yeah.
increase in pay for that
For him.
individual?
For him, yes. Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
oh, well,
So,
then it's full-time.
Yes, so
Because
Cesar
here it says
Moreno,
part-time.
no, but Cesar Moreno was a
Part-time.
5.5-hour part-time
To Clausen
at Joe
full-time.
Carlson, moving into the full-time position at Clausen,
Got it.
okay? Juan Melendez was the full-time custodian at Clausen, moving into the 5.5 part-time at Joe Carlson. So those two individuals are swapping. And then Matthew Moody, one of our bus drivers, is requested to move into the 5-hour part-time position at transportation,
so.
and that was vacant.
So the title of the agenda item, approval of classified transfers, should also include with an increase in pay. Because there is an increase for at least one of those individuals, correct?
Well, we've never, on the title of that agenda item, we've never titled it with an increase in pay, because that information is there for you, but we
Well,
can
no,
certainly do that.
Well, okay, then, but the point should be that just for
For the first person, yes.
For the record, and for payroll and everybody else, that there is an increase in pay. And
Yes.
that, the motion includes not only the transfer, but the increase, okay? Did we have a motion on the floor?
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
yes,
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes,
Mr. Sabal?
yes,
Dr. Gomez?
Yes,
Mr. Bahrain?
Yes. Item H, discussion action on approval of addendums. Who's gonna?
I'll defer this to Ms. Cox, since she got all the
Okay, Ms. Cox, you want to come
information.
up and, so that we can hear you?
So as presented, and this is for the department chairs, activities, or the sponsors. And then we have a couple of teachers on here who are teaching on their planning period.
So, the action today is going to be like we did with the coaches, or we will do with the coaches, that they're being approved pending actual effectuating duties and responsibilities, correct? Because some of those people couldn't be doing anything now because there aren't any students here, or go ahead and explain that.
But Mr. Duarte just told us that some of the clubs are all already starting up.
Yes.
Okay, so they're doing it virtually?
Yes.
Okay, so they are starting their clubs virtually.
Well,
Yeah, but there's no clubs there.
but if the clubs are already starting up, and I just to be technical, when the board approved the platform of going back to school, we did it with the exclusion of athletics and any extracurricular activity or any activities other than those that were presented to the board as far as instruction was concerned, right?
Yes.
So just explain how those activities were put in motion when they weren't part of the original recommendation to the board to do so. In other words, and again, I don't want to be technical, but the only thing the board approved as far as on-site learning was on-site learning. In whether it was whatever, all of the details were given to us, those things weren't included. Those were, as far as I'm concerned, equal to or comparing to football, volleyball, swimming, and all those other activities that hadn't been approved. So how did those things get put in motion?
I can't answer that right now. I will check with Mr. Walker tomorrow morning. So the only reason I said anything was because Mr. Duarte had mentioned that some of the, like,
Clubs and
Clubs.
activities. So what I'm thinking, Mr. Burain, is that, and you're right, and maybe, because this is submitted by Mr. Walker and the high school to HR. And so this is something that happens routine year after year, and probably not thinking that this would be considered an extracurricular activity. The kids are going to be participating online, obviously because there's no kids in school right now, so the clubs are not doing their regular meetings and things like that. So we can, if you want to, either table this, and that way Mr. Walker can then at a different meeting bring this to get these activities approved, or you approve them contingent upon when these activities do resume or take place. If they've already started, which is what Garrick is telling me, like student council had a meeting and selected you as a student body president, then obviously those are some activities that will need to be taking place and eventually, whether it's online or hybrid.
But I think Mr. Duarte had mentioned, or I think they're doing it at the high school, right? You're meeting at the high school.
No,
No,
they're online.
Oh, they're
Virtual.
online.
Virtual.
Everything
Okay,
is
so then the
virtual.
next question is, first of all, if they're online, then that adds another dimension regardless of whether the board approved it or not. I mean, we don't want to be stringent because of all the circumstances. I mean, there's some things that we have to be very, very vigilant of, but things like this, if they're online and there's no actual socializing and those things. But the other point is, those people were already doing that, they weren't being paid, right?
No, and I don't know when they started. I don't know, this was, Garrick, do you know more or less, like you said, student council just started?
Yes. I know that the yearbook club has been meeting since the beginning of the school year, so back in August when we started. And then student council just like 2 weeks ago.
And this is all virtually?
Yes.
I mean, you guys don't
All
go to
virtually.
school and have meetings or any of that. So I think it's staying within the online distance platform that we have, but student activities moving forward during the online portion of, and continuing the online platform.
See, Mr. Duarte, you've already made a major significant contribution here today.
Mr. Beren.
Yes, Dr. Gomez.
Okay, look at the list here. The one that probably that you would be thinking about would be from John Soriano down,
Yes.
okay? Ending at Nathaniel Darris as band director, and those above are some things that.
Yeah,
that's
those are
al-
different.
That's
Uh-huh.
already happening, you know, but if you're a department chair, you're a department chair. If you're a math chair, you're a math chair. Now, the other ones, the sponsors, then that's probably what you're thinking.
Well, exactly, and like I said, I don't want to be technical, and we don't want to be stringent about these things because of the circumstances, and we know that these are all very valid, very important activities, but technically, those weren't approved. And the fact that you're bringing them here for approval for payment tonight is, as Dr. Gomez said, the ones on the bottom are, how could they be functioning now? I mean, for them to be, I don't know, given their addendum. And then again, it brings back the question, and of course, I want to make this clear again, is the question about the duration of the addendum. And that certainly would apply to these people as well, that if they met one time in the semester, the addendum they're gonna get the full amount regardless. We want to make that clear always, and I'm sure the board supports that 100%. But just as a matter of protocol, we want to make sure that everything is being followed according to what we need to do, mandates and those kinds of things. And the original, I don't see where the original approval included all that, but enough said about that. I have no problem with it. If the administration, you don't need to, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know about Mr. Lindeman, Dr. Gomez, or Mr. Ramos-Sabal, but I don't think we need to get technical here and start splitting hairs. Let's just go ahead and approve it, and let the administration, especially the very competent people at the high school, Mr. Walker on down, let them work it out. Is that fair? All right, so do we have a motion on the floor? So the motion on the floor that I'll entertain is that it be all-inclusive, and that the details and the appropriateness and timeliness of the payment and the addendum and the length of the duration of the addendum be worked out by the administration. Mr. Lindeman, will you make that motion?
Yes, I will. I'll accept that as a motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Gomez, all right? So that doesn't cause you at all a problem, it's just a matter of clarification with them, okay? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes,
Mr. Sabal? Mr. Sabal?
Yes, yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Beren?
Yes. And trite, as I always am, none of you people need to fear at all about the pay. You're going to get it. You're going to get every penny of it, because that's the way the board wants it, and I know the administration would recommend that as well. All right. Item I, discussion action on the approval of athletic addendums. Here's another discussion, and this is the one that we made
Yes.
reference to earlier, that these are going to be pending the
Yes.
approval of the activity, and we went over that last week with Mr. Ortega. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
move to approve.
By Mr. Lindeman,
Second.
by Dr. Gomez. Any discussion?
Yes.
Dr.
So
Gomez.
in other words, what we're voting for now, we voted last time to approve them as being that position. Now we're approving the money.
Right.
No, well, yes and no. So what Mr. Angel proposed to you and you approved was the fall season athletic season sports, right? And we presented some of those addendas. What we're doing here is presenting all of our coaches that participate in either the winter or spring season just for the sake of getting them done now. And if contingent upon the activity taking place, that's when they're going to get the addenda. If the sport or season doesn't happen, gets canceled for whatever reason, then it wouldn't go into effect.
Right, and because of, and it's not confusion, it's just because of things are just discombobulated as far as schedules and seasons and so on are concerned. The only thing we approved last was,
Fall
we
season.
gave the administration the authority to determine all the phases. And I know Mr. Ortega probably got a little frustrated with me before he left when I asked him, what does that mean to you? But just for clarification, so that, people don't walk out of here and they're confused and then they do something and say, oh, that's not what the board said. But we're doing exactly the same thing right now. And of course, it's contingent on the ability for the administration. But before we get to those other sports, you have to come back to the board
Yes,
for
we have to
those.
come back to the board for the other seasons.
All those
Yes.
other athletic.
Yes.
Okay, got it? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes. Item J, discussion action on the approval of volunteer. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented.
Any
One
discussion, let's get it on the floor, Mr. Lindemann.
Move to approve.
Second by Dr. Gomez. Discussion action on the approval of the volunteer, which is Elise Figueroa, and she's going to be of the volleyball, is she an assistant?
Volunteer. Just a volunteer to.
Yeah, but I
assist.
mean, she'll
Yeah.
be an assistant. Roll call.
Not paid.
Mr. Ramos? Mr. Ramos?
Yes,
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes, item K, discussion action on the approval of donations received for Douglas Unified School District. Ms. Samaniego,
As presented.
3,000 cloth masks from Cochise County Health Department, value $10,000. Who's going to get those?
The schools.
Right, but who in the school? Students? The students are going to get them?
Students, staff, they are, I didn't see them because they were brought when I wasn't here, just,
White cloth mask, that's all they are.
Roll call. Do you have a motion? Mr. Lindemann?
I move to approve.
Second?
Second?
Dr. Gomez. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
yes,
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes, item L, discussion action on the approval of fiscal year 2021 capital plan submitted to the Arizona State Facilities Board. Mr. Soto.
Yes, this is an annual report that we have to make to the School Facilities Board. And it's basically just letting them know the enrollment and the square footage we have. They just want to make sure that we have enough capacity for the, and like we know we're under, and that's why we're going to the, adding some space at the high school. But all of the other sites are okay.
Okay, members of the board, any questions or comments?
If I may, Mr. President, does this, because we're down this year, will that affect the construction that we are expected?
We hope not.
Okay.
I know the conversation has already started, and it's a possibility that the School Facilities Board will take a look at our enrollment right now and say, okay. But again, just a reminder that the study that was done 2 years ago now, it was because of the potential new port of entry and potentially families moving to the area and stuff like that. That's still an ongoing project that we know is going to happen, but we don't know when. But because of the money situation, the conversation has started. That the SFB hasn't said anything, so that's the good thing. But the conversation between the committee and the architect and the project manager are that there's a big possibility. But as of right now, we haven't talked about that.
Well,
At
that
the
shouldn't
level.
really change because it was approved at the
Correct.
previously.
And
so-
that money is allocated
Yeah,
for that project, so
okay,
we hope not.
thank you.
Entertain a motion to approve that
I move to approve.
by Mr. Lindemann,
Second?
by Dr. Gomez. Any further discussion? Do you have any,
No.
we're gonna get a full-blown report on the school facility board here in the near future regarding the construction and what the progress and
Correct.
what those things look like. Of course, those monies are totally independent of
Correct.
the school district. And just because it is the school facilities board, just briefly, what's happening with the construction up there?
What's happening?
Yeah.
We're at the design phase and actually getting requests from potential contractors to start the construction. We had a walkthrough, I want to say last week at the high school, where we had a really good turnout of potential contractors that are interested in the project. We have they need to submit their proposals next week. I believe it's the 13th or the 14th. I don't remember the exact date. And then not the SFB obviously, but the architect and the project manager are going to be here to actually look at the proposals and weed out some of the ones that we want to work with, and that will be the next step. There's some issues in regards of the economy and the cost of the wood and the cost of materials that are going to be needed for the project. As we know, 16.5 million for 87,000 square feet. It's not much, and they're still using that formula since like 15 years ago, and they haven't updated that formula. But so we're making it work, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have a big report once the design is selected and the vendor, the contractor is selected to present to the board.
Okay, thank you. And we'll get a full-blown report on that a little bit later, not now, when things start progressing, they get past
Correct.
the certain phases.
Correct.
Okay, all right,
Roll call.
I need a roll call.
go ahead.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bahrain?
Yes, item M, discussion action on the approval for early entrance to kindergarten outside of compulsory attendance age requirement for student A. Ms. Samaniego?
As presented, the reason we're bringing this to you is by policy, you are the ones that have to approve a child who turns 5 after the entrance age or the start of the school year. And so this child's parent requested to have this child tested. We did. And based on the testing, it is a recommendation to allow him to start kinder. So
Entertain a motion to approve
I move to approve.
by Mr. Lindeman,
Second.
by Dr. Gomez. Further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bahrain?
Yes. Item N, discussion action on the distance learning plan and hybrid model. Ms. Samaniego?
Okay. Good evening, and obviously, we know that this is a topic that deserves much discussion and thought process, and by no means is this an easy decision to make for any district. Upon my return, we did conduct a staff survey and a parent survey as well, just to take a little bit more input from both sides. I'm going to be sharing with you our results for the staff survey first, and then sharing some concerns, then sharing some parent results, and then I'll go into addressing what we feel, where we're at, where we need to be, and what maybe some of the concerns are that have been presented in the public comments or the comments that we've been hearing, or that you may be hearing from the community. Mr. David, can you go to the DUSD staff survey, please?
Hello.
We're still here, Mr. Sabal. We're waiting for the results of the survey to appear.
You.
Okay. All right, so can you see?
Yes.
Our survey was taken by, obviously sent to all certified and classified staff. And David, if you can go to the next page. The two surveys were sent out, and we got 156 teacher responses, 137 classified responses, and the survey closed this Monday. The surveys just specifically asked about returning to hybrid or starting our hybrid program, and any comments that we could get from the staff on continuing our distance learning, what's working, what's not. So the results that we see, David, can you go to the next 2 pages where it says teacher survey? So based on our 156 responses, it says the question was, are you comfortable starting in-person instruction via the hybrid model? We know that the hybrid model is actually 2 days of in-person instruction and 3 days of online. So it combines and has both of the best worlds. 62.8% of our teachers said no, they don't feel comfortable, and 58 said yes. And obviously you see the number of responses there, 58 versus 98.
Just quickly, when you said classified, did you mean classified instruction, or did you mean?
All the
unclassified?
we surveyed any classified
Okay,
staff,
all right,
yeah.
go ahead.
Now, the next page you'll see is the classified staff survey. And same question. We had 137 responses. We have 59.9% saying yes, we feel comfortable, and 40% saying no. Obviously, we know that we have the free learning space already taking place at every school. So we have students that are showing up, and our classified support staff that works at the school sites has already been working with kids since August the 17th. So obviously they feel comfortable with the hybrid plan. The results varied from school to school. I'm going to quickly go through, for example, Clawson, just so that you have an idea. Clawson staff, the next slide, please. One more. Clawson, this is the results. So teacher-wise, 50-50. Classified, we had 69% saying yes, we're ready to start hybrid. At Ferris Elementary, we had 71 saying no, 29% yes, and that's teachers. The classified staff, 80% saying yes, 20% saying no. At Joe Carlson, we have 44% saying no and 56% saying yes, we're ready. And these are the teachers. And our classified staff is 56 saying yes, 44% saying no. Sarah Marley, 88% of our teachers said no, 12% yes. Classified, 80% saying yes, 20% saying no. Stevenson, we have 68% of our teachers saying yes, 32% saying no. And our classified, 69 saying yes, 31% saying no. Paul Huber Middle School, 77% saying no and 23% saying yes. Classified, 70% at Paul Huber, saying 70% saying no and 30% saying yes. For Ray Bahrain, we have 53% of our teachers saying no, 47% saying yes. And then classified, 43 saying no, 57 saying yes. So they're, kind of almost equal in some schools. For Douglas High School, 73% of our teachers said no, 27 said yes. Classified staff is 39% no, 61% saying yes. Here, what we did is we kind of broke down the data so that it would apply to responses that came from individuals that work at school sites only versus individuals that work, it could be a classified staff member working in a different department. So that's just more data for you to look at. So overall, just schools, when you take it as an average, 60% say no, yes, and 40% say no, we're not ready. Okay. Now, I'm going to skip many of the next few slides because it breaks. It's just about schools. David, can you go to distance learning concerns? So the second question on the survey, if they replied, no, we are not ready to go to hybrid, they had to give us some kind of a comment as to why. And then we asked, what are your concerns right now via our distance learning? Is it working, not working? So we wanted to see what responses. So based on the responses, we kind of just lumped them into two categories. It's working and it's not working. Yes, sir.
And who are the respondents to this survey?
Teachers.
Okay.
Teachers. So this is 65% commented, their comments were leaning towards not working for some reason, and then working for 35% of the teachers. The next slide, we broke down the responses into different categories. And so here you'll be able to see that these are the main concerns over our distance learning plan that we have currently. So attendance, 15% of our staff responded that their main concern was for them was attendance. But if we go by figures, and the highest figure, if you notice, is academics, 31%. That is my biggest concern over this plan that we have. And we are in a district and in a business of educating kids. And so when 31% of the teachers responded that the academics is their biggest concern, then I have a problem with that. I feel that I'm going to concur with the teachers, the academics, the instruction that is taking place right now. For some reason, for some teachers it may be working, but for a lot it's not. Kids are, just the feedback that we're receiving from our principals via their teachers and the school reopening task forces, kids are not logging in as much as they should. They're not staying engaged. Some students are completing the assignments, but really not logging into the virtual classes with their teachers. They're picking and choosing what they want to do. So at the high school level, I think a lot of the responses, did come from the high school and middle school and some elementary. Elementary, I will tell you probably that the support or lack of support at home for kids is more apparent there than it is at the middle school and high school. And so the elementary experience has been a little bit more challenging, and we've been very flexible with parents and students in allowing them to turn in assignments when parents get home from work. But the academics, you can see there, flat out, that is a number one concern for our staff. 23% is, there were no concerns. 23% of the staff felt that there were no concerns. We have lack of motivation, which concurs with the, I think it's a side-by-side motivation in academics. If you're not motivated and you don't have any support at home, then obviously the academics are going to go by the wayside. Then we have attendance is 15% of our staff felt that was another concern, and that has been happening. And I think grade-wise, some of the grades that we're seeing are failing, and then you can look at their attendance. They're picking and choosing when they want to be part of the class. All of our schools sent out information at the very beginning when we started noticing that some students were not logging in, but they were turning in homework. So the stipulation in order to be counted for your attendance was that you had to log into your virtual class, you had to do your attendance daily, and then you had to complete the assignments. So that communication has been shared with students, with parents. Then the technology, if you see, is 6% of our teachers felt that technology was a concern. I will tell you that I feel that we have done a fantastic job in providing devices, as many devices as we had and that we could afford with our budget and with the CARES Act money. We were able to give out, I believe it was close to 2,000 devices. We are in the process of ordering 100 more because we completely ran out. Devices that are at the school site are being utilized by the kids that are going to school. And so the technology aspect of internet and devices, I don't think it's as high as it could have, as it was at the very beginning when we were initially getting started. So that's not a concern, and I don't think it's a high concern for us as a leadership team, as an administrative team. We've done very well in supporting our families. We still may have issues with new families coming into town, for example, that they may not have a computer, and which is why we're ordering at least 100 more. So this is, in chunking it in different categories. Then the next one, this is more of what they said. Okay, what are the concerns? The next slide. So when we looked at, and every teacher responded. So what we did is we grouped them into kind of a section. So students losing interest, parent and student excuses, and I think that refers to, oh, well, I didn't have internet, or I was at work, or I didn't know I had an assignment due. Online learning is not providing enough support for our students. SPED students having difficulties, concerns of their support. Parent support, I think this is referencing to the lack of parental support at home. Students not logging on, doing attendance and turning in work. Student engagement, participation, and learning outcomes. Lack of connections with students, and I think this is all on the relationship building with students. It's not the same as having kids in class as it is in the computer. Students' social and emotional well-being obviously was a overwhelming concern from the teachers. Next slide, please. Many concerns about, obviously, the possibility of the spread. So this is also saying if we go back to hybrid, this is highly concerning. Staff unsure of COVID protocols. The next comment came up several times, and they said teachers working from home are not doing the same required expectations. All teachers should be on site. So if we continue online, the teachers that were given that privilege or the possibility of working from home should work at the site just like everybody else. Online learning will need to be reevaluated if we stay online in order to provide more rigorous academics. Student schedules, possibly combining smaller classes, and this was specifically a DHS thing. Obviously, some of the teachers were concerned about losing students, and then substitutes, will there be subs available? So in that aspect right now, we haven't needed to hire or pay any subs, right? Because everything is online. And if a teacher is unable to show up to work or do their synchronous learning, then they leave something for students to either watch a video or a link or do a homework. So we haven't needed subs. If we go back to hybrid, then you require a teacher to be present. If the teacher is absent, then the whole sub comes into play.
Let me ask you, on the last one, I'm just really confused. It says, will there be subs? Are you saying, will their subs, their personal subs be available, or will there be subs? Will be subs be available?
Will there be subs available if we start the hybrid? So if a
So
teacher
that
is
should be
absent,
their,
yeah.
THE, or will there be?
Yes.
Instead of theirs, will
Yes.
the individual subs be?
Yes.
Okay.
So
good,
I think
fine.
that's what the teachers were asking, because when in a regular traditional school year, if you're absent, we have a list of subs that are available to cover your class. I mean, we don't just cancel school.
Right.
So that is a concern for them. So that was on the teacher side. I don't know if you want to have any discussion just on what I presented to you so far.
What do you have coming after this?
This is the parent.
Okay,
The
let's,
parent information.
Let's discuss the teachers. You want to take a break, members of the board? You want to take a break now?
I'm good.
No, I'm good.
You fine? Everybody good?
I'm good.
All right.
I'm good.
Members of the board, go ahead, Mr. Lennon. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for doing that survey. It was very well done and in-depth. I did have a lot of concerns, though. To me, if most of the teachers feel that they're not ready, and yet they feel that academics is not being covered, what are you gonna do? I mean, that, to me, that's just apples and oranges, that's not gonna mix. So, first of all, to adjust all of the concerns about the attendance and stuff like that, you know, the student has to be in charge of their own education. Especially when you're up in the high schools. When you're up in that age, you know what you have to do, you better get in there, and you better do it. Now, the lower grades I can understand, and I've lost internet connection myself at home. That's a real problem, especially down here. So, I'm kind of leaning that if the teachers aren't ready, and then we should go to hybrid, because I have concerns about the physical plant in itself. You know, but I'm still thinking that somehow we'll have to move it to the kids, that they've got to take ownership, and then they can't be just picking and choosing. And I think you did cover that, Ms. Samaniego, a little bit. And then the other side is that, well, if the teachers don't feel that they're ready, how can they get ready? What are their suggestions to get ready then? I don't know if that was posed.
And what I will say to that is that what teachers are hoping, or that they feel they'll be ready, is let's stay online through the end of the semester, December, and then allow us to then continue with, the hybrid plan when we resume in January. That's what they're saying now. But how will they be ready? I will tell you that personally speaking and professionally speaking, I don't think that the situation we're in, or the pandemic, is something that you can be ready for, okay? The pandemic exists, the virus exists, it's not going away. However, school has to happen, whether it's right now or whether it's in January. And so in January, we may be facing a whole different challenge of, there was a Christmas break, people left, people came back. So how do we get ready for the start of a hybrid? Well, obviously, there's been talk of hybrid since the very beginning. And the idea was that we would return on August the 26th, because that is the start of the next quarter. Of October, yeah. How do we get ready is, obviously, we have to look at the class size, which we've done. The way that kids were set up in A and B schedules was to allow for lower class sizes. So we've taken care of that from the beginning. They're not going to have 25, 30 kids in their classroom. So the other part is that parents will have the right to continue their kids online. So that's not going away. The third part that I hear here is from the teachers is saying, okay, well, the protocols, or who's going to be responsible for cleaning and sanitizing and all of that. We haven't been properly trained. Every school did get some type of training, because we bought the program. Now, obviously everything was online. It was done by a company on sanitizing, on how do you handle anxiety, how do you handle taking off your mask and putting on gloves and things like that. So do we need to revisit that by every school administration? Absolutely. If we are ready to, if we say that on October the 26th, or we push it to November the 1st or whatever, then absolutely that needs to be revisited at every site to address even the concerns of DEA members. And then we look at the instruction. A biggest concern, and I think it comes from all the principals and all the teachers, is how is the teacher going to manage both groups? So you have your kids that are going to be on your computer, and you have your kids that are going to be in your classroom. And that is a challenge. So we've been talking about different possibilities of how it could work. Obviously, the best solution to that would be to purchase an online program that the kids that are staying at home could strictly follow. Okay, you follow an online program, and the teachers that are at work will be dealing with the kids and teaching the kids that are actually coming to school. that type of a software or program is extremely expensive. And you're talking about $80 to $90 a license for a program like that. So if that's not an option for DUSD, how do we make it work so that a teacher can feel successful, that they can feel that it can be manageable? And so that is where I feel we need further dialogue between the task force, the administration, and ourselves as leadership, so that we can determine, because that's going to be the biggest challenge, aside from the fears of students being in the classroom, COVID, getting infected, taking it back home, and the protocols that we have in place, because we do have protocols in place. There is that was shared. If staff feels that maybe it wasn't shared enough, or they've forgotten what's going to happen when a student gets sick, what's going to happen when a staff member gets sick, that we do have those protocols. So then that tells me that our principals have to revisit that and have to review those protocols to ensure that everybody in that school understands exactly what the protocol is. Because if I'm hearing from DEA that our staff is unsure, so I didn't share it, I don't go around to every school and share the protocols. We assign that responsibility to the site principals. So if their staff are saying, we don't know what the protocols are, that tells me that we have to revisit that. And the principals have to do a better job at, expressing and sharing, and, people do forget, so we need to revisit. The curriculum is going to stay the same regardless whether it's online or hybrid. But like I said, my main concern as superintendent of DUSD is the welfare and the academics of the children. Does staying online, will we have more regression? Maybe, because we do have those kids that are not participating. And I totally agree with you that middle school and high school children, need to take responsibility for their own academics. Unfortunately, we have some that don't, and that's where we struggle with. Our schools are doing the best job in trying to get their attention, communicating, home visits, phone calls, emails, text messages, whatnot, to get these kids engaged. But and I see a disconnect there. So our teachers are yet saying the academics is not working, and that's where our biggest concerns is. I don't feel we're doing enough, but then we're not ready to start hybrid. And I think once kids get back to a routine and get back to at least partially in person at school, the academics and the instruction, at least those 2 days a week, is going to improve. Once you have a child there physically, that child doesn't have the option of, of being engaged or not. That's the responsibility of the teacher and all that. The concern overwhelmingly, and that's why I think it's more of like a 69-50, is obviously the situation we're in, COVID, for the staff. They feel we're not ready. They feel it's too soon. The concern, it doesn't say it here, but the flu season coming up and all that. So all of those factors are unknown. I can't say if we're going to have cases. I can't say that we're not. I can't say if we're going to have a lot of children that are going to get the flu. And you combine flu and COVID and all of that, it is very concerning and alarming. But the flu and the COVID is not going to go away by January. Okay, and I think our staff understands that. Our kids deserve a good education, and I think we need to do a better job. And by not returning, by not ever going back into some kind of in-person, I think we're doing an injustice to our kids. I think DUSD has set protocols in place at the schools that we can relatively take measures to keep our staff and our kids safe. If the decision is to continue online, I will tell you that we're going to revamp our online to include more synchronous instruction. So right now, the kids are attending virtually with a teacher twice a week, and then 3 times doing asynchronous learning, which is just, doing assignments and videos. We're going to change that if we stay online, because we've got to get more of the engagement going on with the kids. And so while it may look differently at every level, because the high school has its own, trimester 6-week schedules, they've got a bigger population. The elementary in itself is more of that flexibility because of the lack of parents being at home or being raised by grandparents, and then you've got the whole middle school factor. So if we stay online, I'm going to tell you, one of the things I'd like to do is, I think all teachers need to be working on site. Every single teacher needs to be back on site. We may have to increase, like 4 days out of the week to be doing that synchronous learning to get more of that instruction that's taking place. Hopefully, attendance is a factor. If you are absent for 10 consecutive days, you get dropped. And that's where the most recent drops have been because of the 10-day lack of attendance. And so it is.
But if I may
Yes.
interject you just a little bit, I agree with all that. But I think this is really working well for the kids that do it. And that's where the hard thing is. I have been hearing, that, well, this is working, he does that, but those are the kids that are at the top. They're going to do that. Like, I'm sure that you'll concur with that, but I understand the kids that, oh, maybe I'll do it today. Well, but the onus has to be back on them.
Dr. Gomez. Well, let me see. I have a lot of thoughts. I think one of the worst things that we did was to let the teachers stay home right from the beginning. They should have been in the classroom, teaching from the classroom. That's number one. Number two, listening to that letter of Mrs. Kimball, she does a good thing of saying why we're not ready and that the teachers are concerned for safety, and yet she gives a paragraph of how the student is not doing or not getting the education that it is. So, does that mean, is she implying then that if the kids were in a hybrid, that they would be doing better because they would be having the teaching? See, so
Yes.
I
think
the letter gave a couple of mixed messages there, and then the other thing, and I'll wait till we're talking about the parent responses, and that is that. A lot of people, I think, from the questionnaires that you asked them, do you think we're ready, and stuff like that. I think a lot of teachers that were staying at home got comfortable. And they're saying, no, I like it the way it is. Oh, yeah, of course, So I think that the survey that you took of the teachers, there might have been some biases in there that didn't necessarily have to do with COVID.
Mr. Ramos, do you have any comments up to this point?
I just wanted to mention, I am in agreement with Dr. Gomez, and that some kids aren't, I know they're not going to go online, they're not going to do the work, but it's very important, though, that we do have some teachers involved where the kids will go to school and present themselves there. I know it's a risk, but they can't fall any farther behind in their education, and this is what's happening. I know it's a situation where it's not a regular situation. It's something that's unusual, and we'll get through it. But we have to make a decision here, and I hope we go with the right move that will help our students in the long run.
Mr. Sabal? Well, obviously, I don't know whether he's still there or not, but it's hard if he has anything to say. Just let me just quickly ask some questions, and I'll make some comments. Those computers you talked about, those 100 computers, where's that money coming from?
From the CARES Act.
You still have money there?
Yes.
You mentioned something about the concerns about the staff, and I think Mrs. Kimball also alluded to who's going to enforce and all of the protocols. What is your edict to the staff as far as wearing masks? Do they wear them all the time, or do they just wear them when they're? Can they take them off if they're by themselves, or do they have to keep them on permanently?
No, they, I believe every school, staff decided, it's a district decision. You're in the building, you're wearing your mask. You're not able to social distance, you're not wearing a mask. Now, if a teacher is by herself in the classroom, obviously they can take their mask off. But
Okay, and that
that goes
for
district-wide.
district-wide in all the I know people, some of the employees say
Yeah.
that they work with people in classified especially that they don't wear the mask, and of course for camaraderie and for peace, that they don't say anything about it, but they'll be riding in a truck. So that's up to the principal, the department heads, everybody
To
enforce that.
monitor and enforce it.
The other thing
Absolutely.
is, you have a dilemma. I wouldn't want to be sitting in your position or any superintendent's position anywhere right now. And there's no doubt about your dedication and your focus being on the academics. I can tell you, as a former teacher, that if I were confronted with this situation right now, that I would definitely and obviously say I'm conflicted, because I'm for academics and I want to make sure that I get all of the instruction in I can. I was a teacher that hated pep assemblies, hated early dismissal, hated all those things that took away class time. But also, if you can imagine to have to contrast your health with that dedication, that is a convolution of having to deal with, am I worried about my health and my family and kids coming back to school, or am I going to sit here and be patriotic and dedicated and face whatever I have to and be in the classroom with these kids? That is a very agonizing decision that teachers have to make right now. And I see why you can make that. And of course, you always have to consider that when they make a decision like that, those decisions are affected by their family members as well, their spouses and their children and everybody else. I want to wait to hear what the parents have to say, but the other thing that has to be mentioned here, especially by Mr. Lindeman, Dr. Gomez, Mr. Ramos, Mr. Sabal, and myself, we have to consider that anything that is done outside of the instruction that affects the operation of the school district has to absolutely be taken into consideration. And if we lose students, and because we come back to hybrid, or we're losing them because we're distant learning, and they're wanting to come back, and they're wanting to go, they're wanting to be on site someplace in some instructional environment by going to another district or another school or whatever, that we have to be concerned, and it's the elephant in the room, that if we lose funding, we're going to be in dire straits. And right now, since we've been in distant learning, we've had some savings. But if we go back to the hybrid, and this isn't, and I'm not speaking in favor of any one of the propositions. I'm just being factual here with the board. That, and I think I said it earlier, that we're going to have to look at reduction in staff if we start losing money and we start losing enrollment. We'd have to start looking at a freeze on expenditures and a freeze on hiring. And the last thing that I think any board member wants to do, and it's anathema for a superintendent to have to go in the red or to start registering warrants or having a line of credit. That's the worst thing can happen. I've seen it many, many times, and that could be the mortal sin and as I said, anathema to the superintendent. So I think what we need to do is, after we hear her report, and she is the one and her staff, based on all of the good recommendations and input she has from her staff, is decide what's in the best interest of the students. And then if we decide to do something, we have to make sure as a board that we're able to fund it. Okay, we have to talk about that. It's the elephant in the room. You know, we can say all of these things and then walk out of here and approve something, and then we lose all these students. And then, you know, before you know it, he's gonna be coming in here saying, I don't have money to pay for all this stuff. You know, so, I know her dedication and her love is genuine. And she says it over and over, and her focus is on the students. So we need to keep that in mind. Anna, you wanna go ahead with the next
Yes.
phase on the parents?
Okay. So what we did, as David is preparing, we did survey every school, and obviously the parents that wanted to respond and that took the time to respond, but every parent had an opportunity. So, slide number 2 says the survey was sent by each school. Survey included the grade level and the cohort information and the student's name so that we could identify by school. Some parents did submit multiple responses, but it does happen. You know, I think the more I say hybrid, the easier the board is going to decide. Parents who did not respond, they will be contacted by schools in order to include their input in these next few days.
Excuse me, when they responded, did they respond for each student or was it a family?
It was, if they had multiple kids at the site, it was by student. And
Okay.
so, all right, so we have the next slide. And what we asked is, this was the same question for every parent. If we begin hybrid during Q2, which of the following choices below at this time would you consider for your children? And then it was in Spanish as well. So for Clausen Elementary, we had, the blue is hybrid and the red is staying online. So we had 142 Clausen parents saying, let's return a hybrid. That's 52.4%. While 47% of Clausen parents said online. From what I've heard from Ms. Moen, Clausen parents have been very vocal and let's get back to hybrid, so that is Clausen's responses. For Ferris Elementary, we have 53% saying let's return to hybrid, and 46% saying online. Joe Carlson Elementary is 50-50, 194 responses for each one. That was the only school that had an exact match. At Sarah Marley, we had 62.9% saying let's stay online, and then 52 responses to the hybrid learning, and that was 37%. Stevenson Elementary, we had 116 parents respond to hybrid learning and 109 to online, and that is a 51 versus a 48%. For Rayburn Middle School, 79 parents responded to hybrid and 93 said to continue online, and that's a 54 no, 45 yes. Paul Huber Middle School, we had 55% of the parents said online only versus the 44% saying hybrid. And that's the middle school. Douglas High School, let's say 62% responded to online only and 38% to hybrid. And that's Douglas High School parents. So in summary here, just combining all of our school responses, and these are just parents, you had 46 parents saying they're okay with hybrid, and 54% saying online. That is, overwhelming. Well, I mean, it's not a whole lot of difference, but what I can say is that we did the survey at the very beginning, even before school started, online, and we asked the parents, once school was able to resume, if they, what selection would they elect to enroll their kids. So we have that data. We gave parents options, like I said. And so had DUSD gone hybrid initially, there were kids that were going to stay at home online because that was, a possibility. And so the beauty of our executive order and how our governor and AD stipulated this is that we were going to be able to either do one or the other, and it was up to the district. And so giving parents choice. Parents, I believe the ones that answered are probably still the ones that are going to be keeping their children at home. And so regardless if we start hybrid, those parents have that option and will continue to keep their children at home because they are fearful of, their kids getting sick, and we will respect that. And so I haven't, other than the parent survey, the principals have been getting, feedback through individually at their sites. And so again, the elementary, I think, is the toughest area where we see, kids struggling a lot more, parents working, grandparents staying at home, watching the kids and helping them maneuver the online learning. Middle school and high school, obviously, more of a ownership on the kid. And if the parent is not home, that's where the child is probably taking advantage of not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that's the parent response. Not every parent responded, and I'm hoping that by the end of the week, we're able to reach out to those parents that didn't respond online to have a better idea. I personally have only been contacted by one parent, and when I explained to the parent, he was much better. He thought that if we started hybrid, his child had to go to school, and he was not willing to do that, or he was not going to sign the waiver. And I explained to him, no, you'll still have that right, and your child will be able to still do online and be a DUSD student if we start hybrid. So that is on the parent side. Obviously, you as board members may have been hearing from, community, because this does affect our community as well, and we are a small border town. I also, in addition to just this, I had a phone conference meeting with one of the local doctors, because I wanted to also hear the health perspective. Obviously, being a main factor into teachers saying, we're not ready, is the whole fear of COVID. And on the health perspective side, coming from Arizona Health Department and the Matrix, and Cochise County Health Department, we are in the green areas in all three components, meaning that the cases are minimal. There is, 0 to 2% of hospitalizations in our community. And so there's the three matrices, we've met all three. The recommendation, or based on just the health department, is that all the districts, with the exception of one, is that they can deliver the hybrid model of teaching. Now, that's the health perspective, and understanding that we get to decide, or the board gets to decide what is best for each district. Not even understanding or taking word for word what the health perspective is saying or the recommendation, but it is a factor, and that's what AD and the governor said, that before we resumed to in-person, there was going to be these matrices provided so that we could see, and our governing boards could see, where we were at health-wise. The conversation I had with the doctor, obviously they have other concerns, and they see children in Douglas. And so what they're saying is that, obviously they've seen a lot of anxiety, a lot of obesity, depression, and abuse. And so in looking at the whole aspect of COVID and the pandemic and kids not being in school for such a long time, they feel that it is time, that it's safe enough right now to return to start our hybrid, that the virus is not going to go away. It's going to be there in January. It's going to be there in March. It's just learning to adapt to it, to live with it, and taking all the precautions that we can. Now, we can take all the precautions in the world as the parent that said there was somebody that went into church. And I think every person or every business or you may walk into and not know you have COVID and, you find yourself in that situation. So that is the most difficult part of all of this, is that you can't control and you can't guarantee. I am very supportive of the staff and have been very understanding of all their concerns. But we also have to then understand that this is not going to go away until there's a vaccine, and who knows when that is happening. School has to resume. We're getting easy merit testing. That's not going away. The virus is not going away. We need to do something. So obviously, whether we go online, we need to revamp it. Whether we stay in hybrid, we move forward with hybrid, we've got to make sure that we are able to start. So there's just a lot of factors that come into play. But I will concur with Dr. Ed that if we make a decision, if the board makes a decision that, it is in the best interest of kids right now to continue online, is that all teachers report to work. The other thing that I feel we need to do is, as you know, per the executive order, even though we were on distance learning, we had to open up our schools and provide a safe learning space. Our instructional support staff have been the people that have been monitoring and supervising the kids and helping. And a few of the schools have waiting list of parents requesting for a learning space, but because we didn't want to maximize the number of kids or put them all into one classroom or one space, then we've kind of adjusted it to where it's X number of space so that we can social distance, so that we can guarantee that the staff is going to be safe and that the kids are going to be safe. Right now, Mrs. Cox, you've been here this month running the show. You haven't had any concern or been brought to you of any kids with positive cases, right? And every school has from, I want to say, 15, 20 to, 60 some kids showing up on a daily basis. Now, our IAs are the ones that have been working with them. So if you see the classified staff survey, the classified staff has been doing it. They've been working with the kids. So they don't have a problem with it because they've been doing it. Our classified staff has been okay. I mean, all of the staff have been working, those of them that work in the building, so they've been okay. The hybrid model will allow for parents to have choice, to continue to keep kids at home if they want to, if they are overwhelmingly concerned. And it will allow those parents that feel that their child needs to go back to school and have that interaction with the teacher, improve the instruction, the academics, and get to some kind of normality. Our online platform, if we stay online, we need to take a look at it and revamp it somehow so that we address the concerns here, which is number one, the academics. It's not a win-win situation. Definitely not one that is easy for any school district to make, but it's not going to go away. The virus is not going to go away. So I don't know if you had any comments on the parents.
Could Marco put that chart back up, the one that showed the percentages of the concerns of the teachers on the one that showed 6% tech, 31% progress?
It's the other,
I
David.
think those two criteria And I think that should be the focus is the concern of our staff and their major concerns about coming back. But at the same time, the progress being made academically by our students. And I just want to look at that chart again, and so that we have more of a reference point. All of those other contributing factors are very important, but I just want to take a look at this one again. That one, that's it. There were 31% of the staff was concerned, and these are the professionals, about academics, and the other was 5%, and it didn't reflect anything in there about their own personal concerns and their own safety. So given all of that criteria there, the majority of the staff thinking, notwithstanding that other element that they could have been asked about their own personal feelings, which may have been motivated as to why they voted like this, but is that 31% of student achievement and progress. And to me, that one and the staff's concern about their own welfare and safety are the two factors that I'm going to look at. And I don't know how the board feels, or do you feel comfortable enough tonight making a decision, or would you want this information to digest, also giving opportunity for staff again and parents to give us more input, however it's done, and then we come back and make a decision? What are your timelines on the hybrid was scheduled for the 26th?
Yes,
right?
the hybrid was scheduled for the 26th, and because of the start of the quarter. Now, that's not set in policy or in stone or whatever we decide. So if we need to push it back a little, maybe a couple weeks, one more week or whatever, it'd be after the start of the quarter, we can certainly do that just to get prepared. And before you go on, Mr. Bahrain, I do want to just explain, these concerns were on what we're doing right now. So
Exactly.
yeah. So the other concern of the COVID and all that was explicitly identified by the percentages of staff that said, no,
Right.
I'm not ready to come back.
Right.
So I wanted to know what is working, what is not, what are your concerns by what we're doing right now? Because that's important to me. And that's why you don't see the factor of their safety in this question, because that's not what they're dealing with right now. They're not they're not interacting with kids
Right.
physically. So in this question, they're not concerned with that. But if you asked them, are you ready to go back, start hybrid? They said no. Some
Right.
said no.
Right, but again, those were the two
Yes, the two
factors
factors.
that I looked at, but they did mention on the present distant learning that 31% of them, and that was overwhelming, that their main concerns were whether the kids were progressing or not. So, okay, members of the board, we have a special meeting the 14th to do the budget, right? The revised budget?
Yes.
I'm just going to throw it out there for discussion. Would you feel comfortable entertaining a motion to discuss this further at a future meeting, which would specifically be the budget meeting? And of course, I'll get Anna's opinion too, but so that we could make not a more informed, because we got a lot of information, but we could get maybe some feedback or think about it a little bit and digest some of this stuff, and then come back and make a definitive decision on the 14th, the same night that we do the budget revision. I don't know, how do you feel about that, Mitch?
Yeah, I'd rather gather more information and look at it, and I'm not prepared to make a definitive decision tonight. We'll just see all this information.
Exactly.
Because I have more questions, that I wanted to bring up.
Dr. Gomez?
Well, I don't know, people at Walmart were thinking that I was stalking them, but I went up to a lot of parents. I would say almost 15 parents at Walmart. Some had their child with them and stuff like that. And I said, the way things are right now, would you like your child to be part-time in school or the way it is right now. Every one of them said, I want them in school.
They want them in school?
They want them in school. And one even said, you know, it's very difficult for me, she says, when I try to help my child in math. I took math, she says, all the time that I was in school and in high school. She says, I can't. She says, because the way that it's being taught is a lot different than what I did. So she says, I know my child is lagging more and more and more in math because I can't help them, and it's hard for them to do it virtually. And then some of the students said, you know, I want to go back. And I said, well, just because to be with your friends? She says, well, no, because she says, I think it's easier. I would learn more than what I'm learning now. And one lady even said, I think that my child is going to lose a year if we stay in virtual.
Well, there's no doubt that the instruction has been diluted for many, many, many reasons. I mean, I mean, there's no doubt of that. And then Anna mentioned the testing is we're still gonna be responsible there. So would, Mr. Ramos or Mr. Sabal, would you want to, again, have a little bit more time to think about this and come back, the day we do the budget revision? And then specifically make a decision on that night?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I think that's an excellent idea, and I agree with Dr. Gomez, you know, but before I make a decision, I want to be certain that I'm making the right decision.
Yeah.
So an extra time is better for us, I think, the board, and whole.
Yeah, and again, there's just so many things that we have to consider. We have to, as a board, we have to consider many, many things.
And Mr. Brain, before we end, I'd like to ask Garrick, as, you know, a student of DUSD, and I think Mr. Brain wanted your perspective. How are things going? How do you feel? But hearing the discussion and hearing and seeing the responses, just give us a student perspective on either or.
Speak into the mic, too.
Yes.
So, based on the responses of the people who were actually working with the students and seeing as they are comfortable with going back, I think that shows a lot that a lot of people, they're worried about it now, but maybe when in practice it might not be as hard as they think. I definitely think from a student standpoint that going back is necessary. I know a lot of students are struggling more currently than they have in past years, just because it is way different. It's harder to retain things that are being presented to you digitally rather than in person. And obviously there is that social aspect that kids are missing. And although that's not the priority in compared to health and safety, I think that is something to take into account. People's social health is a big deal, especially in these like adolescent years. So I think that going back is really, really important as soon as possible, because when like we were told, or I guess it was just what we were thinking was we'll go back in August, back when we stopped in March. And then in August, we were told, well, we'll maybe go back in October. And then now that it's October, if we're told we'll maybe go back in January, I can just see everyone's motivation just dropping drastically, because it just, it does weigh on you, just not being in school. So that's my standpoint on it.
Very good, thank you. That's great.
Yeah, Mr. President, before we end this discussion, I do want to ask, and I wanted to point out that students can already go to school. You know,
Yes.
there's plenty of room. So, and if there's parents that need to have their kids to school, they should send them to school without technically calling it hybrid, because there is space there and the teachers are there. So I think that needs to either be advertised or so that people know that you can do this already. without making a big thing out of it. The other thing is that, I'm envisioning that, say the elementary schools, the rooms are the same. If you had 25 kids in a room last year and you go to A and B, that's still 12 kids or so. And they're not social distanced in the room. The room has not changed. So I don't think there's room in there for all that. So my
For 12?
concern is that the risk is still too great. Thank you.
Okay, is there any more discussion regarding that? I'll entertain a motion to continue this discussion at the October 14th board meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
By Dr. Gomez. Any discussion? And hopefully, board members, I'm sure you're all extremely conscientious about this. I know you'll be thinking about it, and then maybe you can get some feedback from some people. And then, Anna, thanks for the
Yes.
report. You're not in a good position right now, but I do know that you're listening to staff, and that's
I
important.
am listening to staff and parents, and of course have an overwhelming concern for our student population. And so what I plan on doing from here to the 14th is obviously have some staff meetings at every school, because I need to address the lack of maybe information that they have to make them feel a little bit more comfortable. So that if we move forward, we are better prepared. So I will be meeting with staff, and I do plan on potentially having some virtual town hall meetings with parents. I think that gave me a real good opportunity to meet with parents when I did the virtual town halls, and so I can do that from here to Wednesday.
And I know, as we all are, that you're extremely concerned about the
Yes, I am.
academic
I am.
achievement. That's, all of the things we've discussed, the one thing that shouldn't get lost in the shuffle is how much instruction those kids are getting.
Yes,
And
exactly.
then how valid and pertinent it is.
Yes.
Did you have a last comment?
Yes, I was wondering, Ms. Samaniego, if you would maybe consider a student survey. I know that, at least at the high school level, student council could help you out with that.
Okay. That's
But that
a
might
great
be
idea.
some information we want
Okay.
at the next meeting.
We may
Very
even
good.
have a virtual town hall with students. Invite them to that. Okay.
Great, thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes. Request for future agenda items, members of the board?
No.
Announcements, Ms. Samaniego?
I think we just we'll have our special meeting, and then I want to remind of all of our parents that are out there watching, students, we don't have fall break this year, so they just have Monday off, and we will be sending that communication out, because I have a feeling that some parents will think that it's a whole week off, and we may see some attendance. So Columbus Day, no school on Monday. And the end of quarter one is approaching on the October 23rd. October 26th is when we initiate quarter two. And our next board meeting is on the 4th, regular board meeting.
Thank you. Item 6, executive session. The governing board may vote to go into executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431.03, subsection A1, for the following personnel matter. A, consideration of a 2021 certified teacher to be released from her contract, and B, consideration of a certified teacher to be released from contract. So I'll entertain a motion to do that.
I move to move into executive session.
By Mr. Lindeman. Is there a second?
Second.
By by Dr. Gomez. Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes. So we'll go into executive session. Take a quick 5-minute break.
Okay. No, it's David. David.
That's
It's,
another guy.
God, he's lost a lot of weight.
Tell Marco he's in.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, we're back in open session. Item 7A, discussion action on the request of release of the 2020-2021 contract submitted by Miss Amy Griffer, certified teacher at RBMS. Entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the release of contract for certified teacher due to medical conditions with no liquidated damages and rehirable.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Dr. Gomez was first. Any discussion?
Yes,
Dr. Gomez.
yes. And the reason that I asked her this, because I had seen it somewhere that she was open to helping us out. And if we can work out something, Mrs. Griffith, would you help us out?
Yes, sir, I can. I can work from home, I can,
Yes, exactly.
anything, even if it's like a substitute and you need somebody to watch the class, I mean, I don't mind. I'm gonna be at home all year, and, my goal was not to leave here. My goal was to,
Yes, I
work
understand.
here
Yeah,
and.
that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Any kind of help you need.
Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes,
Mr. Bermain?
Yes. Item B, discussion action on the request for the release of the fiscal year 2020-2021 contract submitted by Ms. Carla Campillo Soto, School Improvement Specialist. I'll entertain a motion to approve for the personal reasons discussed in executive session.
I move to approve the release of certified teachers contract with no liquidated damages and rehirable.
And Dr. Gomez? Excuse me, is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr.
Second.
Ramos. Any discussion? Also, I would just add for the record, with regrets, she's been a tremendous asset to the school district for all the years she was here. We're ready for the roll call.
Yes, sir. Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
yes.
Mr. Bermain?
Yes. No
That's
further
it.
items that come before the board, Anna?
no.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Dr. Gomez. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Everyone else has left the call.